Hey Saints fans, welcome back to the channel. Today, we're going to talk about a hot topic over this past week after the week 1 win over the Tennessee Titans, and that has been about Trevor Penning. A lot of people clamoring for him to get moved to guard. And in this video, I want to talk about why moving Trevor Penning to left guard wouldn't do anything for him, and in fact would actually make things worse. And I want to kind of dispel some of the myths that are out there. There have been many arguments made about why Trevor Penning should move. One, people would say that he's not athletic enough, which we'll cover that in a second, but that's easily disproven. Two, the argument is that, well, James Hurst played left tackle last year and he can move there while Penning works on being left guard, which kind of brings up the second point of that. One, keep in mind that James Hurst was your worst offensive lineman last year. While I really appreciated what he did, he was your worst offensive lineman, gave up the most sacks, most pressures, etc. And then you got this aspect where it's almost like this is building into left guard is easier. And let me just go ahead and tell you, offensive line play is difficult across the board. Hey, struggling with the 45 or a jump set as a left tackle? Guess what? You got to use the same techniques at guard. So it's not inherently easier just to move somebody down. And a lot of people don't really understand why that actually happens when it does happen. So we're going to try to cover a few of those things. This is going to be a very technical style video. So hope you enjoyed. If you enjoy these type of film studies, go ahead and comment "Who dat" in the comments section down below. I love when the community chimes in. So I want to see how many of y'all actually pay attention this far. And let's go ahead and talk Trevor Penning and why he's actually struggling to start the season. All right, so to start, we really need to explain some of the basic sets that an offensive tackle is going to make in the game. Now, technically, these sets can be used by any offensive line, but we're talking Trevor Penning here. So the argument that I'm making in this video is that the reason he's struggling has absolutely nothing to do with athletic ability. So you should see this guy excel as an athlete at left tackle, and players are telling you that. They've said that this week, but then also you'll see that from evaluators and coaches. And I'll go ahead and give you a few different names to look. If you want to see and learn more in depth about offensive line, Charles Bentley, Jeff Schwartz, Brandon Thorne, Duke Manyweather, Coach Mouse. There's a lot of people, especially on social media, who are giving out a lot of great educational material. So when it comes to offensive line play, there's three basic sets that they're going to operate from. You have first what's known as, and a little bit difficult, but Saints fans will remember this, was a jump set, where you're going to set out and then go very aggressively to try to close in the space between you and a lot of times like a wide 9 technique. Then you have the 45, which is taking a 45 kick step, and you're breaking out. Usually in the 45, you're going to expect by the second step to be engaging with the defender. And then you have a vertical set, which is you're kicking straight back, and then you're letting that come into you're defending the arc. Now, a couple of premises that are understood when you do these, particularly with the 45 and even the jump set, or I'm sorry, even the vertical, but especially with the 45, when you take these type of backwards into the arc movements, you're expecting to have help from the inside. One consistent theme from Trevor Penning in this week 1 loss is that when he lost, he typically lost to the inside. And we'll talk about why. Now, be very clear, this is not it's actually James Hurst's fault video. I don't think that James Hurst is an elite player, but I do think he's a quality player. But there are ways to beat techniques. And when you have a player that is not well developed in techniques, these are some of the things that you can do to take advantage of him. So one thing about Penning is almost all of his sets are kind of like a tentative 45. He doesn't have that full repertoire that we would talk about from a defensive end standpoint. You know, we talk about their toolbox. Same thing with an offensive lineman. He doesn't really have a full toolbox right now. So what are some of the things that are kind of missing here? Well, let's watch the rep in full, and then I'll kind of talk about some of the things that I noticed when I watch his rep. I already see 3 things just literally in that quick 2 seconds that he has got to improve on. So let's talk about what they are. As we come through, let's just talk about where he gets to a set. Right here, I already see an issue, and you can actually see the mirror of this on the opposite side. SON, shoulders over knees, simply comes down to where's your center of gravity? Are you standing tall, and are you already kind of on the defensive? Are you playing on your heels? Is something that you probably would have heard coaches talk about. Having that center of gravity be forward and able to bring on and accept that incoming contact is a lot easier when you are not momentum moving in the wrong direction. So that's one thing. Shoulders over knees is a little bit too extended, moving backwards. The other set was actual kick step. Now you also want to do a couple things when you drop into a 45. You're wanting to establish half-man relationship. And to do that, I'm not trying to get profane, this is literally how it is taught, knee to crotch. Your knee, in this case Trevor Penning's knee, your left knee needs to be right in the crotch of Arden Key when you get through your kick step. So As you're breaking into the 45, you're trying to target half of that defender. And if that defender has gotten head up on you, he's already obtained inside leverage, which is going to make it easier for him to break inside. Now, to be very clear, just because we've reached this point does not mean Trevor Penning's already lost the rep. Couple things that you can do. Inside punch, you can technically try an outside punch or a dual-handed punch. Couple different things that you can do to reestablish and maintain this as you're in your set. He has very passive hands, and he's almost catching the defender as he's coming into him. And he's trying to do this to establish what's called an anchor. You're going to bring in the defensive end to you. Once he's in, hopefully you've got good inside hand placements. You sink your butt, you sink your hips, you drive all that force into the ground, and then you stop. Hence the word anchor. All right, another similar rep to what you just watched. He's going to, again, have some struggles at the inside, but you're going to see some of the same things happen that we just talked about. In fact, I'm going to swap the angle around real quick and let you see it from the opposite side. So here's Penning on the right side of your screen. Again, he's got a wide set, whether he's fighting a 7-tech, a 9-tech, whatever, from the defensive side. He is, again, going to kind of utilize that 45. And how does he attack with it? How does he handle it? So as he comes out of the set, you're going to see one thing I think is pretty consistent with him is not the lack of athleticism in the footwork, but simply his positioning. He's already on his heels this entire time. Look how his body is kind of overextended at the top and sinking back in his back. Compare it to somebody running a similar set right over here, Ryan Ramczyk. Look at Ram. See his shoulders are right above his knees. See how his butt's not leaning back. See how he's on almost the balls of his feet. He's got full contact with the floor. Whereas Penning, as he's going through his moving, it's almost a little, I don't want to use the word awkward, but you can tell that he's trying to think of everything that he's doing at the same time. At least that's what I see when I watch this rep. Again, watch it right here. So he's going to come in. Again, his depth's not bad, but his positioning of how he's utilizing the technique is already like, it's almost, you can see him trying to catch as he's getting into a step. But you expect actually around this second step for now is where we're getting into contact. Were he not kind of leaning back into it? Were he more into that fully, committed to that 45? Now is actually where you would expect to get him really close to starting with the jab. Whether he's going for an outside or an inside, you expect a single arm jab here. Now, I would also say that better positioning in terms of the whole half man here in the beginning, but goes back to the hands. Where's that violent launch of hands? We got to get hands on. It's like a corner. You've got to reroute that wide receiver. It's the same thing here on the defensive line. You've got to reroute them. If you give them full access to use their moveset hands and you don't aggressively go after them, you're going to have stuff like this where he gets bopped in the head. Look, one of my favorite phrases ever was from Duke Manyweather, who teaches that pass protection shouldn't be passive. And that's not how it is for a lot of other guys. Look at Ram. Ram might be catching, but his arms are engaged. He's ready, and he's going to shoot at you. He's going to keep his guns out the holsters and attack. That's something that you're not seeing with Penning. He's still working on his steps. His hands are down low, but he never gets a good jab in. The timing on his punches is off, and he gets beat inside. And again, we talk about it. When you set a 45, the expectation is inside help. And I'm not saying that Hurst is the problem, but I am saying that when you have a guy that's trying to develop, you know how to take advantage of that if you're the defense. Defense sees the dude basically only does 45s. He's struggling with his footwork. Attack him inside. Let's watch some more reps. Okay, so let's take a look at a better rep from Penning here. And I think many of you, if you caught the first two themes, the better rep is going to be a arc run, as in going up the arc. This is a better set. So a couple things to note here. One, even though Derek Carr leaves the pocket, it's good to understand what the responsibility is for both a left tackle and a right tackle when it comes to defending the arc. Their responsibility is the depth of the drop of the quarterback. So in a shotgun, that is an automatic 3-step drop. That's the basic premise of the shotgun. There's 3, 5, 7, and even 9-step drop depths for quarterbacks. If you're in the gun, you start at 3, and typically you're going to be 3, you're going to go back to 5, and then plant and read your field. That's what you're going to see here from Carr. So that means that we need to defend between a 5 and 7-step drop depth when we're talking about the arcs. That means that Trevor Penning's responsibility is to guard from here to about right there. This is the area that he needs to defend. Same thing on the opposite side with Ram. So in this play, you do see Derek Carr break out the pocket. That is what's called initiating the scramble drill. And that's because the receivers weren't open and he wasn't going to sit in a collapsing pocket, even though I think it's pretty decently rep tier. But anyway, let's watch it one more time and talk about why I think Penning does much better in this rep. So one, he's coming out and again, using that same technique, that 45 to try to engage. First things, I think that he does a much better job this time in terms of what I was talking about before. Shoulders over knees. He's not immediately going backwards with his momentum. He has a much better established base, and he does a better job at shooting his hands. But I do want to point out that both guys fail when it comes to shooting their hands here. They don't get great contact. Both defensive ends try to go for a two-arm kind of low bull rush. And I think you're going to see different reactions from one, a former All-Pro, and one guy who's essentially still a rookie. So on the right side of your screen, focus on Penning first. Let's take a look at what he's doing well. One, footwork was better here. Right in that second kick step, he was launching into his attack with his hands. I do want to see him shoot him a little bit faster, but much better, cleaner rep with the footwork there. Then, right here, after the swipe, now we need to re-engage. One thing he has done is he's established his anchor. You can see that. See how the butt is flat, but the legs are bent, feet are flat. He's established that anchor, and now what is he doing? He's defending that arc. He's a good job. Ends up being about 7 yards back. Again, this wasn't perfect. Let me show you, opposite side, what the slight difference is, because he does end up giving at the top of the arc, but there was a clean pocket to make the initial reach for the quarterback. And let's look at Ram. Ram, same set here. He's going to go for a 45, shooting his hands a little bit late, misses. But how does he recover? One, Ram had great footwork already. Two, his body positioning and control is already good. So now he has to recover from this rep. He has to counter it. Countering it by dropping into his anchor. And he does it, which is actually really impressive, with having lost the upper part of his body. He essentially stops this rep with his lower body. Watch. Set, re-anchor, re-arm. Does a great job to stop that rep. Did he completely win that rep? He did not. But because all the rest of his technique was good, he was able to manage and reset his hands, get them back underneath, and drop into his anchor at the same time. That is a very quality, good offensive tackle, offensive line adjustment. And again, Penning did better this rep, but it's not perfect. Let's look at another. All right, again, they're going to try to attack him up the arc, right? So they're going to try to go over the top on him. Does a better job here with his footwork, not perfect. And I think he has a pretty good recovery here. When I mean recovery, I'm talking about how he reacts to the pass rush that comes after him. I think he has a decent counter. So one, little bit, again, back on the heels. This is going to be just a problem. I think this is going to get worked out with time compared to Ram on the opposite side right here, who's doing a similar set, but definitely just better positioning. Lower butt, shoulders over knees. Penning's going to get better at that in time. I do think that when he finally gets back into more of a vertical right here, he does kind of find that solid. One, right arm, not as great. Left arm has to adjust. But this part I actually really like from him. This is where you actually see him utilizing good technique. So a one-arm bull rush, this is exactly how you want to pull it off if you are the Titans defender. You want to attack that inside shoulder right at the chest plate. You want to extend and then turn your body, because turning your body ends up giving your arm about 4 or 5 more inches. So if you're fighting a guy who has extremely good length, a one-arm bull rush can be a good thing to do. How does he defend against it? Right there. Attack the elbow. Little things like this, while also dropping into his anchor, show you that he is getting better as a left tackle, but he's clearly not there yet. This is not a Trevor Penning defense video. This is a look at Trevor Penning video. Look at what he is learning and what he is needing to still improve on. Also take a note of Hurst coming in with the assist right here. So first things we want to look at is the footwork and the kick step. Is he coming through? Is it quick? Is it efficient? It is. Is it perfect? No, because I do think he needs to get better at actually where that step is taking place. And that's why I like when the athletic argument comes up, I'm like, what do you mean the athletic argument? You can't watch him and say he's not athletic enough, but you can definitely look and say, wow, that technique is sloppy in various aspects of what we're talking about. So again, similar depth as what you have Ram doing. Well, Ram's a freaking all-pro. So if athleticism was translating, you would think that would impact how quickly he got somewhere, right? You ever hear somebody talk about a guy's feet being like in cement? Then it comes down to, well, why are the feet in cement? Is he just not as athletic as somebody, or does he have bad technique? And I think in the Penning case, it's the technique that's still developing. That's the problem. But I still think you see some good reps here. What he really struggled with was the interior side. How do you fix that? Slide protections. Chipping on the outside helps. But a big thing I expect New Orleans to utilize as you're moving forward, Trevor Penning, is slide protect, which is going to make it even more of an assist from left guard James Hurst to help him out. You actually expect a lot of slide protect for these type of situations. But anyway, continuing on, I think it's a good job to readjust here, but let's keep on. I'm just going to give you 4 reps. All right, as the game goes on, let's look at another one. And again, you are going to see Tennessee try to take advantage of a guy who, in terms of game experience, is a rookie. It's a much better job here. What does he do? What are some of the things that I've talked about throughout this video when it comes to technique? If you're going to jump into something like a 45 against a wide aligned defensive end, you want to play half man. Well, what's he do here? He's in half man. He's got that knee to crotch. That relationship is there. How is he attacking the shoulder of the defensive end? Well, how is he shooting his hands? Let's look at it here. How's he do? Better. He uses the outside punch this time. Now, this is a technique that you see a few different people utilize across the NFL. When it comes to how you attack in your 45, there's a variety of ways you can do it. Brandon Thorne wrote an article for USA Football probably 4 or 5 years ago. But the point is, when it comes to the type of hand striking, this outside hand strike can be very effective to, negate to an extent some of that pass rush and put them in a position you want. Also want to note, where's his body here? Shoulders at the knees right now. He's not overextended. He doesn't have his shoulders all the way over his knees, but he's level up. Butt's flat, knees bent, feet flat. Looks good, right? He's not overextended, but he's also not falling backward here. Does a good job shooting his hands this time. And now he's just attacking that inside shoulder. That is a great rep. Problem is, he isn't doing it every rep. So if he shows that he can do it some reps and he's not doing another rep, that then reiterates the technique conversation that he has to get better at. But hey, maybe there's more. All right, a little later in the game, real quick, I want you to see this one on the left side. This is going to be taking on that 2-arm bull rush. This is a great job to reset his anchor. We talked about that a couple of reps ago. So again, I didn't want to just show you negative plays. There are positive reps here, and that's the importance of context. When you get to see these type of reps, you can see, okay, what is he doing well? What is he doing bad? Because honestly, all you're going to see from the broadcast angle of this is you're going to see Trevor Penning up on the ground. Because the broadcast view of games is not made for you to be able to study plays. It's made for you to be able to follow the football. That's all the broadcast view cares about, is following the football. So you're not going to see whether Trevor Penning actually gets out into a 45, has good hand placement, has a great job to set an anchor, and then attacks the outside, or the inside shoulder of the defensive end here and draws him up the arc. The only reason he falls on the ground is somebody runs into him. So again, more reps, but hey, let's look at some more. All right, another one for technique here. And this one, we're going to see something that looks like a jump set that's just completely off. So why did this fail? Well, he never really had it to begin with. So cue the Fast and the Furious 1 movie that nobody remembers the quote of because we're too old. So one is going to try to get out wide, but it's already messed up because he doesn't even jump set into it. He actually is already chasing at this point. I mean, look, his feet are together. He's lined up basically parallel. It's completely off here compared to a jump set of what you would normally see Teron Armstead do, his prime in New Orleans. So he's trying to go meet the defender out in space. But the problem with that is if you're going to jump set, you have to not only get to them, but you have to be able to engage them immediately. If you don't engage immediately with a jump set, a good chance you're going to be beat around the edge, especially against guys with speed. It's exactly what happens here. That jump set was not clean. It did not get into the chest immediately of the defender, and that defender was able to use the speed of the arc to get around simply because of the positioning of it. I mean, this is a huge loss. When you have your second step, you have 2 hands on their back, you are really struggling to defend the arc. So this just goes into the technique we talk about. If you're going to do something like a jump set, well, you got to be able to get hands on. So instead of a jump set, you just had like a power step, like you were, moving at a 45-degree angle for an outside zone block where you use a power jab step, or you can use a bucket step for that. But either way, point being is beat around the edge real quick. You see the frustration for him after the play because he doesn't ever get into that chest of what you're trying to do. If anything, it'd probably been better for him to stick to the 45 he was running before, even if that means he gives up a little bit of ground. Maybe he could have got better hands on here. So again, the things that we're looking at with Penning, it's the footwork because of the technique of the feet. It's the jab and the actual launch of those hands and how aggressive they are, or in a lot of cases with Penning, not aggressive enough, too tentative, right? He's not out there enough. And you can really see, in my opinion, it's confidence in his technique. He knows that he doesn't have it yet, and he's trying to get there. So he's second guessing himself and maybe even making himself a little bit slower in how he reacts. He doesn't have the ability to counter and recover like the All-Pro on the opposite side of the screen does. But I don't think it's an athletic problem. It's just a technique problem. All that to be said, I don't think moving him to left guard does anything to help him out. because he's still going to have to utilize 45s, jump sets. He's going to have to now be the primary striker. And how does he deal with the twist and stunt game that opposing defensive ends just really throw at New Orleans and have done so for 2 years because of the liability of the left side of the offensive line? I don't think moving to guard helps him. And even if we make the Andres Pete argument, it took Andres Pete 3 years to become a solid left guard, 3 years before he made a Pro Bowl. And he also came into the league where them playing and lining him up as tackle and then eventually switching him to guard. So they put him at both to try to see what he looked at, where Penning has been doing nothing but 2 years of tackle. Now, use that information for what you will, because obviously you expect him to be a little bit further along after 2 training camps and 2 seasons and an offseason with the Saints. But in terms of what he's showing on the field, I don't think anything has to do with his athleticism that's failing him. It's the technique. And the only thing that's going to make that better is time and reps. So here's the dirty truth about Trevor Penning in week 2 of 2023. He's just not ready. The thing is, historically, this takes time. Very rare for a guy to come out and just immediately dominate as an offensive lineman in the league. You look at even the New Orleans Saints history. Jermon Bushrod, realized he wasn't a first-round pick, but took 3 years. Look at Teron Armstead. Took multiple years before he finally got there. Look at Andres Pete, who we just talked about. Took years to become that guy. That's just the nature of the position. Offensive line is very difficult. It takes a very special type of physical profile and athleticism, as well as great mental processing and understanding the game from a technique standpoint. Guys who are dominating at guard or tackle aren't just doing it because they're the most physically gifted people in the world. They're doing it because not only are they incredibly physically gifted, but they also are really good at their craft. And I guess part of this video is just trying to remind people that, look, offensive and defensive line is not just about 2 big men beating each other, right? There is technique in this that the slightest things can alter. We talk about the power of a pass rush plan that defensive ends can utilize. Well, the pass rush plan is to set up people like Trevor Penning into using certain moves so that you can beat them later with something else. It's forward thinking. I don't think Penning's there yet as a left tackle. He doesn't have that level of confidence in his technique. And the only technique that he utilizes consistently is the 45. And he's trying to perfect that. Jump set's not there. Vertical drop isn't there. And that's also why you see him being better in the run game, because he's going to be a 6'7", 330-pound, stronger than everybody, whatever place you line him up. But he's still going to struggle in pass protection, whether he's at left guard or left tackle, until this technique gets better. So no, I don't think that Trevor Penning should move to guard. I don't think that would help New Orleans at all. You just got to hope that he develops fast if you're expecting Derek Carr and the New Orleans Saints to have a successful year offensively. If you like the video, thumbs up, do all the things, subscribe if you haven't already. Who dat, God bless, catch you on the next one.